speaker tonight will have that. So it's the top of the hour. As I said, we normally start with reports about our various committees, and I'm going to start with Betty. Betty is the co-chair of Chicago Women Take Action, and she also is uh, Betty. I must screw up your title with Citizen Action. What's your title?
Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. So Betty also is a leader in Citizen Action, and they are taking the lead and pushing and educating people about our Supreme Court vacancies, two that we have here in Northern Illinois. So Betty, why don't you take take the mic, and then we'll continue the program moving.
Okay, I intend to be very brief, and I don't know who's calling me.
But they always happen, you know. At the inopportune time, you get a phone call.
I know, and I don't know how to cut the phone, the particular phone that's ringing in here. I don't know how to cut it off. So, but I'm going to be very brief because I'm so excited to hear from Heather. She's my old friend from way back when, and I want to hear everything she has to say. But I was charged to be a part of a committee of CWTA to determine one of the things we decided we wanted to do was partner with other organizations and come up with an action for tonight. So the first thing we did was decided that we would partner with League of Women Voters in Chicago. We're already partnered with Planned Parenthood. We're going to partner with Promote the Vote, which is a group of 44 organizations that meet bi-weekly on promoting the vote, and League of Women Voters Chicago. Lastly, we are partnering with Citizen Action Illinois, who has put together a project called Protect Our Courts. In Illinois, we have two Supreme Court candidate offices that are up for grabs. Well, not for grabs, but up for election in Illinois in the 2nd and 3rd district. We don't have any in Cook County, but the 2nd and 3rd districts have positions that are up, and Citizen Action Illinois has decided that we will educate the voters in those two districts on the importance of electing Supreme Court justices that will support the issues that you are concerned about. And just like the Supreme Court of the United States has taken away Roe v. Wade, it's very possible Illinois could get turned around too if we don't educate our voters as to who's running, what they stand for, and what it will mean to us. Citizen Action Illinois' project is called Protect Our Rights, Save Our Illinois Supreme Court. The co-chairs are myself, Julie Hamos, Renato Mariotti, who is a former assistant U.S. State's attorney, and Larry Rogers Jr., who is a Cook County Board of Review commissioner. To that end, the action that we are going to ask all of you to participate in is a postcard mailings that we have, and Sherry, who is our secretary, will put the link in the chat so that you can go in and order your postcards. There are other things that we will be doing going forward, and you can go to citizenactionillinois.org to find out what else you can do. But for tonight, we are asking that all of you go to the link and order postcards, and these postcards are being designated to the two districts that have candidates up for election. So, having said that, our next meeting is scheduled. We meet once a month on the first Monday of every month, but the first Monday in September, as we all know, is Labor Day. And we had planned to ask Julie Hamos to speak so that I would not be the self-serving presenter because I'm already co-chair of CWTA. But Julie is not going to be available on the 12th of September. So we will have myself and William McNary, who is the executive director of Citizen Action Illinois and overall coordinator of this project to protect our courts. If you have any questions after Heather's presentation and Oren's presentations, I'll be happy to answer them. But for right now, I just want you to make a record of the link that is in the chat so that you can order postcards and begin to send them out to educate the voters in the 2nd and 3rd district of the importance of voting in this very important election. Along with myself and William, we will have our very own expert, Carol Levine, who is our expert on courts, everything about courts, and she will talk about the other judges that are up for election, because we want to make sure when we vote in November that everybody goes down the ballot to the judges. Supreme Court will not be at the bottom, but there are other judges that are up, and we must educate ourselves as to what they have done in their careers, and we need to know about judges, and Carol Levine will tell us all about it. And thank you very much for allowing this time, Ms. Jackie.
All right, thank you very much, Betty. So remember that we don't meet on Labor Day, but we'll be meeting the Monday after Labor Day, which is September the 12th. Do any of our other committee chairs have anything pressing they want to, or can I turn the mic over to Donna?
So Jackie, let me just quickly,
Okay.
one, join everyone else, Heather, in loving having you here. So value your friendship and most of your leadership and your continued leadership and passion. It's loving you as a friend, but inspired always for what you're doing and for what you continue to do. So for our committee, we deal really with gun violence and prevention and police accountability. So on the quickly on the gun violence and prevention side, we're working to push forward and press for a special session on guns to get a ban on assault weapons and everything else that we can locally, and pushing it nationally, working in coalitions locally and nationally, and asking our members to work with us. Our committee meets monthly, the fourth Monday of each month. And if you are interested in joining us, we welcome you. You can email me or Dee Clancy, who's a co-chair, and I'll put my email in chat, and we would love to have you join us, and I can give you the information. On the police accountability, we were part of the coalition that got passed the Empowering Communities for Public Safety Act, which has created a commission to have oversight of the police. And the most important thing our members can do, and we urge you all, is we can run for the commission. There's going to be an election next January, and the commission is really going to be that body that leads the police oversight, which we have never had in Chicago. And every day brings us new tragedies. So again, there's training this year that the coalition that we and others are going to be doing about running for these positions. And we encourage you to both run, encourage your friends to run, and let's make sure that we get an oversight body that is controlled truly by the community and isn't hijacked, which is a danger if we don't make sure that people run all through the city. So thank you, Jackie, for giving us a minute. And I'm anxious for us to have this session.
Great. All right. Any other co-chairs? Anything important that you want to share right now? Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to rush you, any of you, but I'm like Jane and Mary, excited for tonight. So before I turn the mic over to Donna, who is going to introduce our guest speakers, I just want to say that Heather Booth is one of those people that once you get to know, it's like a magnet that you just gotta like stick to them, or whether or not you're working on anything in the realm of things that Heather is concerned about, or if it's something entirely different, there's always something you can learn from Heather Booth. Heather and I had the pleasure of electing Harold Washington mayor. And as organizers, we put our organizing skills together and we're very successful. Heather called me one day during the Gore election and said, we got trouble in Ohio. I need you to go there and go there and see if we can win Hamilton County. So on the weekend, I packed a couple of things in a suitcase and went off to Ohio, following the direction of one Heather Booth. So when Heather calls, you respond. That's all I can say. But, Heather has a lot to share with us. We know about the Janes. If you haven't watched the documentary on the Janes, do it. It's on HBO. Go check it out if you want to know the history. But that's where we were, Now we have to do it almost all over again. And so in this modern day of fighting for women's reproductive rights, we still have lots to learn from Heather. So I'm taking up all your time, Donna. I will shut up. And love you, Heather. Love you, Donna. Go ahead, introduce our speakers. And
my heart is beating hard right now thinking about Heather. My heart is beating hard because you're right. Once you get to know Heather, it's a forever thing. Heather has deep Chicago roots. She's a University of Chicago graduate. She's a woman who believes in social justice and equity from the cradle. In high school, she joined CORE in protest of the Woolworths lunch counter discrimination. In college, she became a leader in Friends of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, as well as a student liaison to the Chicago Council of Community Organizations in protest of Chicago's history of school segregation, and just a bit more. Heather was advisor to Harold Washington's mayoral campaigns, followed by a position as field director for Carol Moseley Brown's campaign for Senate. She's worked tirelessly for NOW to obtain the passage of the ERA. She directed Americans for Financial Reform, bringing 200 consumer, labor, and special interest groups in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, which led to the passage of Dodd-Frank Act. She's a lifelong activist, civil rights and feminist rights and community organizing. She's the subject of 2 must-see documentaries, including Heather Booth, Changing the World, and The Janes. And now I turn this over to you, Heather, as we rage over the post-Dobbs decision that erodes women's reproductive freedom. And so please start by speaking to the context of this moment.
The reason I wanted to get through the introductions is because I wanted to thank all of you. First of all, I feel this is like my homecoming to see my homies here, to be introduced by Donna, who is just an inspiring, dynamic leader, and Jackie Grimshaw. I don't think I've learned more from any other person in my entire life than from Jackie Grimshaw about the dedication, the leading with the values, the doing the organizing, the work that needs to be done. And then as I look around, I could spend probably almost the entire conversation, which I won't, just on thinking who's on this call. Sherry Kosey, who's a wise woman staffing this effort. I'm sorry, Sherry, and then Judith Kosey. What a dynamic duo, not the same, but great sisters in this movement. But as I look around also, Betty Magnus, Jackie Kendall, my partner at Midwest Academy and Democracy Partners, Mary Gardner, Mary Ann Johnson, Rita Sussman, Marilyn Eisenberg, say hello to Lev for us. our kids grew up together. Jane Norling, my goodness, just to find you on this call. Jane Ramsey, thank you for your generous comments. Joan Flanagan, Karen Guzner, Ori Pennick, and then Eileen Rosenthal, and the 2 who had been part of Jane, Crystal Overton, thank you, and Rosalie Fruchter. And there are probably many more. I just got a skim of who was there, but I feel my heart is full being with you. We are of the same values, core, and driving forward, wanting to know, just as Rosalie and others asked, what can we do that will really make a difference, particularly now? Because right now we are on a knife's edge between democracy and tyranny, between democracy and an authoritarian rule that I used to think only happened in other countries, even as imperfect as our so-called democracy is. On the tyranny that is lurking, that is challenging us and demoralizing us. Roe was a key part of it. I mean, this most intimate freedom, the decision to make when or whether or with whom we have a child. What is more intimate for a person's life? Or to, even on that decision, there's 1 in 5 women who will have a child, who will become pregnant, will have an abortion. 1 in 5. I always think about it and I think, I never had one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 people in each row. It is likely that 1 or more in each row. Your friend, your sister, your cousin. This needs to be safe and legal and accessible for all. But it's not just Roe that's demoralizing. It's the fight back on 50 years of progress that we made on voting rights, on civil rights, on education, on just the hatred, on this attack on January 6th, on a criminal attack on this country against democracy by people who knew they lost the election in order to steal that election. And all of these fights, I find it not only frustrating, but it's exhausting. And it makes people think, is it even worth doing this anymore? And so it's why I really want to talk tonight, because there is an equal promise of even greater democracy coming closer to the promise that we've heard about this country, which has never really been true, but greater democracy. 70 to 80% of this country believes in the very values that we believe in. And it's true, 77% believe that Roe shouldn't be overturned and that a politician should not come between a woman and her physician on this most intimate decision of our lives, 77%. It's almost 80% that there should be sensible gun laws. You don't need assault weapons on the street. The country is with us. Joe Biden had 8.1 million votes, more votes than any presidential candidate has ever had, 7.1 million more than Trump had. The country, the majority is with us, but they are demoralized by all this bad news. They are demoralized by thinking it's a midterm election. The party in power never wins, and we didn't pass everything we wanted. But there is, when the majority is with you, if you organize, you change the world. And the reason I'm glad to be here tonight is you are the people who do the organizing. You are the people who have changed the world, and together we will change the world, but only if we organize. Right now, if we win 2 seats in Congress, in the Senate, and hold on to the Congress, Betty Magnus knows, she's nodding her head, we will overturn the filibuster and codify Roe. The president has said that we just need 2 more seats. And later on in this call, I'm going to go through what those seats could be, because there is a plethora that we can choose from. And the Republicans are putting up people who are such wackos that if we get out our people, if we organize, in the past, we have changed this world. And right now, we will change this world. I'm going to turn it back to Donna to see if there's another question, but in the course of the conversation, I do want to lay out where we can go, what we can do, as well as some of the story of Jane and this abortion underground. Donna, did you have another question or? Oh, Donna, you're on mute. You're on mute still.
I got so excited, Heather. I lost the button. I swear to God, that's what just happened to me. I just got so excited by it. I just had a verklempt. Okay, so anyhow, I want to say, let's talk about Jane for a minute. I mean, you talk about a powerful movement, something that that you knew a change had to happen, and it was so illegal, and yet you were undaunted in getting Jane on the ground and fighting for women's repro rights. So can you talk a little bit about that whole time of Jane?
Well, in a way, what led me to work on Jane began earlier when I was in the civil rights movement. Donna mentioned some things. I had been part of the Congress on Racial Equality and then worked with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee called Friends of SNCC in the North. Amongst other things, in 1964, as many of you know, I went to the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project. Many of you have heard about that, where students in the North, and I was one, I was in Chicago, were recruited to go south to Mississippi to support the incredibly courageous African Americans in Mississippi who were fighting for simply the freedom to vote. And during that summer project, and now if there's a slide that can come up, I learned the first big lesson. And if they're not slides, that's fine. But the big lesson I learned, which I'll describe in a minute, is if we organize, we change this world. During that summer, if we organize, we change that world. And during that summer, next slide, I stayed for a while with Fannie Lou Hamer. Many of you know about Ms. Hamer from Ruralville, Mississippi, who was a sharecropper here. I'm 18 years old with my guitar, often played at the community rallies. And Ms. Hamer is right in the middle with two of her friends that are home in Ruralville, Mississippi. She was a sharecropper who, when she went to register to vote, the person who was the landowner said, if you go to register, I'm throwing you off this property. And she said, I didn't want to register for you. I want to vote for me. She was not only thrown off the property, later she was beaten. She became lame her whole life, but she was a courageous voice for freedom. Next slide. And this is a picture of me again at 18 in Shaw, Mississippi, in Bolivar County, where we're doing one of our first voter registration drives. And it was taken minutes before I was arrested for the first time. I wasn't even doing what I thought was civil disobedience. I thought I was just supporting the right to vote. And I realized that at some points, you need to stand up to illegitimate authority. Now that summer project gained notoriety, next slide, when the three young volunteers, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, were killed at the hands of the Klan. And as horrible as that was, within a year, we did win a Voting Rights Act. And I learned that key lesson, that when you organize, even when you are facing terror, even when we are facing a MAGA right-wing supremacist opposition, when we organize, we win. I came back to Chicago in 1965, and a friend of mine told me his sister was pregnant and nearly suicidal and wasn't ready to have a child. And could I do something about it? And how I got involved in response to the question you asked, Donna, was really as a good deed. I didn't even see it as a political action. And I think all of our actions have to begin out of love and caring. I often talk about love at the center. So not knowing really what to do. In fact, many of you may remember, some of us are the same age, that we didn't really talk about sex publicly, let alone about abortion. But I said I would try and figure out what I could do. So I went to the medical arm of the civil rights movement, and I went to, some of you may remember him, Dr. Quentin Young, who was the head of the Medical Committee for Human Rights in Chicago. And he directed me to a Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who was extraordinary. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but Dr. Howard had been a civil rights leader in Mississippi and came to Chicago when his name appeared on a Klan death list, in part because he fought for the investigation of the Emmett Till murder, the teenager from Chicago who was murdered in Mississippi when a white woman said he had whistled at her, which recently you probably saw the news that she even recanted that and said even that wasn't true. And Dr. Howard, though I didn't know it at the time, had actually set up a clinic called Friendship Clinic on 63rd Street. Some of you may have known it. I didn't know about that at the time because 3 people talking about having an abortion or arranging for an abortion was a conspiracy to commit a felony. And so we didn't discuss it with others. I didn't learn the history. But Dr. Howard performed the procedure. It was successful. And I really thought that was it. I thought that would be the end. It was one good deed. But then word spread and someone else called. I made that arrangement and someone else called. And at that point, I realized I better set up a system. I asked Dr. Howard, what do you do in advance? What happens afterwards? Is there any pain? How should I advise people? What do you charge? Oh, it's $500. That was a lot of money in 1965. Could we get 2 for the price of 1? Could we get 3 for the price of 1? I was in college, so I said, could you give me a scholarship fund? And Dr. Howard was terrific. After a while, though he was no longer available, I found out much later that he himself had been arrested for providing abortions, but didn't report on me. And it just shows what a person with ethics and morally driven, what they can do. I found someone else to provide the procedures. His name was Mike. And more people came through. So many, I couldn't handle it myself. And so I recruited other people. Jody Parsons was one. Ruth Sergel was another. Some of you may know them from Hyde Park. And other women, just as, what was it? I'm looking at the name of the person who said, Rosalie Fruchter said she was part of this. Over time, there were probably 100 different women who were part of Jane. And the women coming through were more and more. There were probably at the height, maybe 100 women a week were coming through. And we didn't want to say, call Heather or call Rosalie. So we said, call Jane. Pregnant, don't want to be, call Jane. And so many were coming through that Mike couldn't do all the procedures himself. So he asked for help, and the women started to support him. And then Mike decided he wasn't going to do them anymore. And he also let the women know he wasn't a doctor. At that point, they realized if Mike could do it, and he wasn't a doctor, they could do it. And the women of Jane, between 1965 and 1973, performed 11,000 abortions themselves. Next slide. And so this is a picture of the movie that's out, The Janes, and there's another movie coming out with Sigourney Weaver, Call Jane, that will be out in September. And it's just hit at exactly the right time. And so it itself, it is inspiring people. And Crystal Overton, thank you, Crystal, for your comments in the movie and for being the courageous person you are. At that point, the women's movement was also developing. And as I came on, someone was saying they were part of Chicago Women's Liberation Union. Eileen Rosenthal, I think I saw saying that. I'm so glad to have been your partner in Chicago Women's Liberation Union. Next slide. And here I am in front in this white dress, and I'm with a stroller with my son, Gene. And we were fighting then for childcare, and we won a revision of childcare licensing. We won $1 million for childcare when $1 million was real money. And we won it because we organized. The same way that we won Roe becoming the law of the land, because we organized and moved it into elections and elected people who could nominate judges and then confirm them, who actually believed in this freedom in our life. So for many years, we have let the organizing dissipate a bit, and we haven't connected the organizing to the elections. Meanwhile, a right wing has been rising with enormous funding, and a devil's pact has been made between white evangelical churches and the far right of a Republican Party. And with that unity, they have created a force that has pushed us back. But we are still a majority of this country. And when we organize with love at the center, we have changed this world, and we will change this world. Oh, there's one more slide, and that is the struggle goes on. This was a slide of myself in an immigration reform. I was a strategic advisor for the immigration reform campaign, and there are other actions. Civil disobedience is just one tactic. It's not even my preferred tactic, but it was one way on the immigration reform fight. Here we were also being, the civil disobedience involved about 50 members of Congress, and it gained national attention. And we haven't won yet. We haven't won a pathway to citizenship yet, just as we haven't won yet the advancement on voting rights or on women's reproductive freedom. But we make progress when we organize. I turn it back to you, Donna, for the next question.
So Heather, we feel the anger as well. We all feel the anger. And what action can we take? What action can get the people to the polls to impact voting, to change the world, as you say, to win? How do we do this? What is the steps to get people to the polls?
I often talk about 4 M's, 4 M's. And many of you on the call, you know this. You may not call it the 4 M's, but you know this. The first is members. We need to recruit people, but concretely, not just like people in general. How many people will we recruit to this? To make the calls, to write the letters, to do the texts, to go in person, to knock on the doors. There are things we can do right now. My feet don't really work very well. I'm aged with bunions and other things. I may not be knocking on the doors, but I can write those letters. I can make the phone calls. But how many people will we recruit for that? Or you want to do concrete work. A number of you asked what concrete work, and we'll come back to this more later. If you want to support people who are at the centers of the abortion centers, you know, there's centers who previously might have been servicing 500 people a week, are now servicing over 1,000, especially in Illinois, where it's moving as a sanctuary state. So how many people will we recruit to drive people, to house people, to feed people? And I actually think this organization should set overall goals. We will recruit 100 people for the election. Maybe that's too low. How many will each of us recruit? Crystal could recruit 5. I see Rosalie, you did this once. You were wondering what to do. Could you recruit 3 more to make phone calls, to write the letters? Each of us can have a personal goal as part of a larger goal. So members. The second is message. What do we say? And how do we convey it? In some events like this, how many of you have other places you can have events? I came on, someone said they were in the, I thought someone said ACLU, I thought someone said League of Women Voters. All of you are in other organizations. Are you in churches or synagogues or mosques? Are you in other community neighborhood groups? I heard about Citizen Action, which, by the way, I was so glad to be by the way, Betty, I think I'm being invited into the Citizen Action. Maybe, in fact, you promoted it. Of course, I'm following what Betty says all the time, is typical. But there are other organizations. For those of you, many of you might be younger, social media. What will we tweet? What will we post on Facebook? You can post your grandchildren, but also post our message. What will you write an op-ed? Will you write a letter to the editor? What will we say? What's our message? And our message needs to be ones that are tested and effective. I tried to give 2 messages in this early part of the call that have been tested, that we talk about abortion as, we can say the word, but also to say, this is the most intimate decision of a person's life about when or whether we have a child. That's a way that that relates to real people. I also tried to say that extremist right-wing MAGA faction who had criminal activity to undermine an election which they knew they had lost, that phrase has been tested and again is an impactful one. But this organization can share with you what are effective messages, and we have to figure out how are we going to spread it out, and then have goals. Will we tweet once a week? Will we Facebook post once a week? Will we have social media kits? Will we give talking points? Will we do training for how do we talk in public? Many of them, including me, we're scared about talking in public. We can train each other. We can all learn. So members and message. The third is money. It takes money to do this. And whether it's money to support a group like Chicago Women Take Action, or if it's to support some of the centers that are providing abortion or abortion services, whether it's Planned Parenthood or whether it's Chicago Abortion Fund, which does fabulous work, or any of the particular clinics. But we also have personal PACs. Someone said that they're part of that. How to expand, that's on the support side. But we also need money for the candidates. I mentioned how the Koch brothers, actually, I don't know if I did explain the whole thing. The Koch brothers are, I found out recently, the Koch brothers, who are making their money off of producing dirty energy. And so they don't want government regulation, they don't want taxes, and they don't want climate, a sustainable climate efforts around that. They are one of the largest funders of the anti-reproductive freedom movement. Why would they care about this? They don't really care about it, but their billions are going into efforts because they see a common cause on ending government that can work for the people. And so we need to find our common cause, but we need to raise money for it. For those centers, I described that part, but also for the candidates. So we need members, message, money, and movement. Someone said they're too old, they may not show up. I'm 76. I try to show up when I can, but not as often as I did before. But when the call goes out, will I do something online? Will I speak out? And will I show up periodically when the call goes out? And you can put out that call. So those are the 4 broad M's. What I want to do, though, is move into what are some of the specific races that can make a difference. Because again, as I said, 2 senators, and we hold the House, and we can codify Roe. Of course, people are needed, forward-looking, honest elected officials are needed at every level. Governors, you see what a change of Governor Pritzker's made in Illinois, a transformational change. We need secretaries of state, the people who control the elections, attorneys general, we need state legislators. But I'm going to focus on governors, but also focus on senators right now. If we only need 2 more senators, but it also means we need to hold those we have. There are 4 that are currently held by Democrats. And these are, in Nevada, Cortez Masto, who is at 46% in the polls, against Laxalt, who is at 43% in the polls, with 12% unsure. New Hampshire, Hassan against Bolduc. Hassan is 49% against 40% for Bolduc, 11% not sure. Georgia, Warnock, 48 to 44. And Warnock is running against someone who I really think is tragically not in his right mind. Someone who said a father needs to care for all their children, whether in wedlock or out of wedlock. And then it turned out there were 2 other children he never acknowledged who just showed up. Or he said he graduated in the top of his class. He never even graduated. It's one thing after another against Reverend Warnock, who's just a prince of a human being. 48 to 44, there is a shot there. Arizona, Kelly, 48 to 39, 13% not sure. There are 4 more races in which there's a Republican. Actually, there's more than 4. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 4 closer races where there's a Republican or an open seat that was held by a Republican in which we need to pick up 2. And there are another set of seats that are like that. There are slightly longer shots. Wisconsin, that is near enough. How many carloads is this organization going to get to go into Wisconsin? You may not go, but you can get a carload. Your kids can go. Your grandkids can go. Your friends, your neighbors. In Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes, by the way, the primary I think is just on Tuesday, so it's coming up. He's not yet the candidate. He's not yet the nominee. Mandela Barnes came out of our kind of organizing, and he's our kind of people. He was the lieutenant governor. He's running against Ron Johnson, who supports the MAGA conspiracy. That is, and currently, again, the primary is not over. It's Mandela at 46 to 44. Pennsylvania, John Fetterman. It's an open seat. This is an extraordinary former mayor of a small town called Braddock, Pennsylvania. He has on his arm, I think it's 10 dates by which people were killed, 7 of whom were killed by gun violence while he was mayor, because he never wants to forget those people. He never wants to forget that we need sensible gun laws. So he is running this fake Dr. Oz, who probably lives in New Jersey. And he's got, if you haven't seen the Fetterman ads, you should see them. One of the ads is Snooki from Jersey Shore saying, "Oh, Dr. Oz, we're so glad. Welcome back to New Jersey. We're so glad we honor you in New Jersey." He's running for senator in Pennsylvania. So the ads are really effective. Ohio. Oh, and that's 50% for Fetterman, 44. This is not going to stay, by the way. The numbers will go up and down. That you're up or that you're down is not decisive, but it means there is a pathway forward. In Ohio, Tim Ryan against J.D. Vance, 46 to 36, 18% not sure. J.D. Vance is this phony hillbilly elegy. You may have seen his movie. You may have seen read the book about it. I did. I thought the book was very appealing. I enjoyed the movie, but he is a phony from the word go. He had said previously he'd have nothing to do with Trump. Now he is kissing Trump's butt every place he can go, and even worse. In North Carolina, Sherry Beasley, African-American against Ted Budd, 44% to 40%, 6% not sure. Florida, Val Demings. Many of you may have seen Val when she came in for Jan Schakowsky's remarkable luncheon. Who here was at Jan's luncheon? Yeah, I was too. I looked for Jackie Kendall. I couldn't find her. So, Ori Pennock. Anyway, but Val was this extraordinary speaker, former chief of police, against Marco Rubio. I almost feel I should say my grandmother might have said spit when you say something, when you say a curse word, you got to spit. So and right now it's close. Demings, again, Rubio is in office. Demings is only 6 points behind. It depends on what we do. Iowa, Mike Franken against Chuck Grassley. Grassley is 89 years old, and Missouri. This is in some ways the winner of them all, though it's a tough state, not clear. The primaries tomorrow. Lucas Kuntz, who's the likely Democrat to win, against a Republican who's also with a third-party candidate who will take votes from the Republican. And the Republican was a former governor who had to resign because it, not only for financial allegations against him, but he also kidnapped his lover, stripped her, tied her to a chair in the basement and took photos of her so that she would not blackmail him. This is the Trump family supported candidate for senator in Missouri. You think we got a chance? Now, none of this is a given, but it means there's a pathway forward. And on the House, 538, which is a very trusted site, says that the Democrats are likely to pick up 6 seats in the redistricting maps that went through. And the reason that happened, remember when they said redistricting, well, there'll be a blowout just on redistricting alone. The redistricting is not fair. It is racially gerrymandered. It is not what we want to see. But we pick up 6 seats. And a CBS poll on the House said there are 181 seats that lean Democratic, 173 less that lean Republican, and 81 seats that are competitive within 5 points for either party. And so I come back to the main point. The only way ahead is if we organize. And if we organize, we can change this world. So I want you to go out from this meeting with a sense of hope and confidence and spread this message. We can organize and change this world. I go back to you, Donna.
Heather, before we get to Oren, who will speak for Men for Choice, I just want to ask, maybe you could inform people a little bit about Midwest Academy and what that does, what the mission is.
By the way, Jackie Grimshaw is on our board, so it just shows you the high quality that we have. And Jackie Kendall was the director for, Jackie, I'm probably missing the number of years. 30
30.
years?
30 years.
30 years. So, and just built a national reputation of it. I was the founder of the Academy. It's a training center. The website is www.midwestacademy.com. And it's really a remarkable center, both for training and for organizing. Many of you knew Jay Travis, who is very active in Chicago. She was the co-director. For family reasons, she stepped back, but we've just hired a new co-director, Yomara Velez. We're going to actually announce it in about a month when she officially comes on with Eric Zachary, the co-directors. It is a great program to learn about organizing. There's much more to say, but I realize with only about 12 minutes left in the session, I know we want to hear both from Oren, and I don't know if there's even time for questions, but I do want to just thank you for who you are, what you do, the commitment you've made, and the difference that Chicago Women Take Action has made and will make. So I thank you.
Okay, well, Heather, we're breathless, but now we're going to bring up Oren Jacobsen, who heads an incredible organization called Men for Choice. And I think I'm going to let him, rather than give a long introduction. I think Oren, wherever you are, these little Zoom boxes, the platform is yours.
And we're so glad to have men of goodwill as our brothers in this struggle and partners.
Oh, amen, amen, amen.
Good evening,
And
everybody.
women.
And Donna, thank you for the invite to join all of you tonight. Heather, I'm not sure if it's good to speak after you, but the positive of speaking after you every time is that by the time you're done speaking, I'm fired up and ready to go. I can't compare to you and all your work, but I am fired up and certainly ready to go and grateful to share a panel with you and to be with everybody tonight. I think it's important to sort of start recognizing who and what I am as a man in this room, knowing where we are and what we're talking about. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the anger and the pain and the rage and despair, and offer on a personal level my apology for the fact that so many people like me have ignored the warnings that people like you have offered to us over decades. And I want you to know that we at Men for Choice are working hard to change that moving forward, to literally change the way men think and speak and act as allies and partners in the fight for reproductive freedom. My name is Oren Jacobsen. I'm the co-founder and co-executive director of Men for Choice. We started here in Illinois, but are now a multi-state advocacy organization focused on a very simple mission, which is bringing more men who support abortion rights and access in this country off the sidelines and into the fight to protect and expand reproductive freedom. The reality is that the majority of men in America actually do support the right to an abortion, but most of the men who are supportive of that right have sat passively and quietly on the sidelines, while men like Donald Trump and men like Mike Pence and Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis and a whole host of others have used their voices and their power and their privilege to attack your basic dignity and your right to plan your family in the way that you think is best. And so that's what we do. On a personal note, my grandfather is from a town called Lublin, Poland, which some of you may know. And before World War II, there were roughly 40,000 Jews in my grandfather's hometown. So 40,000 is pretty abstract, but some of you may have been to Wrigley Field or to what I still call Comiskey Park. And both of those stadiums can host 40,000 members of our community. So if you can imagine what it's like to be in the ballpark with 40,000 of our people, of our community, the noise and the vibrancy, what it's like to be surrounded by your people, enjoying a day of life. And then think about what it would be like to be inside of that same stadium with fewer than 1,200 people. How quiet and empty and lonely and desolate it would be. My grandfather is one of just 1,200 from his hometown who survived. For those of you who are trying to do the math, that means 97 out of every 100 Jews in Lublin, Poland before World War II were murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust. So for me, I have always internalized that story as if I statistically shouldn't be alive, that the math of me existing is literally a 3% chance. And that's driven me in my life to do two things. Number one has been to stand up and fight against anti-Semitism. And number two has been to stand up and fight for all those who are attacked for the very crime of being who they are in this country. And a little bit more than 7 years ago, by the way, the dog barking in the background, if you can hear her, is named Ruthie B in honor of RBG. So I apologize for Ruthie B, but she does stuff like this whenever I'm talking about abortion on Zoom. When I think about this issue in particular, and 7 years ago, when a woman named Andy Friedman, who is a Chicago native as well, gave a 10-minute presentation about the state of abortion rights and access in America, I immediately saw what was a systemic, coordinated, intentional, nationwide effort to overturn Roe as the start of an effort to fully and totally ban abortion across the country. And I said to her after that presentation, I had no idea this was happening. Keep in mind, let's go back to the good old days of the spring of 2015. Barack Obama is president. Donald Trump hasn't come down the escalator. We're probably all convinced Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president of the United States. We live in Illinois, where it's in theory safe and blue. And many of us, myself included, probably thought Roe v. Wade was settled law. And in 10 minutes, that whole idea was shattered. And I said to her, I have no idea what can I do to help. Like a good organizer to Heather's 4 M's, she recruited me as a member first of Personal PAC, where she is on the board, and then asked me to support that work. The second M, right, some money. And I noticed something when I was at that event, which was that almost everybody in that room were women. And with the exception probably at that time of myself and the amazing Terry Cosgrove, who I think is on this call listening, and the CEO of Personal PAC. But I knew from the polling that there really wasn't a gender divide on this issue. The divide on this issue is overwhelmingly about ideology. And because most men in America support reproductive freedom, I couldn't figure out why we were not there. Where were the men? And I set about, along with another group of guys here in Chicago, to answer that question and to change that. Now, I want to show you a picture just for a quick second, because this gets to the fact that we are actually building an organization with lots of men organizing alongside us. This is the Men for Choice Summer Organizing Team. There are nearly 40 of us, including 33 college-age men who are fellows or fellows coordinators with our team organizing this summer. And I show this to you only to say, and by the way, we had our fellowship meeting right before this call. I show you this only to say that the tides on this question are changing, and that we are literally bringing in hundreds and thousands of men into conversation around abortion rights. In the next 6 weeks alone, Men for Choice is going to host more than 80 events where our fellows are literally organizing community conversations with other men like them to talk specifically about abortion rights and allyship and how they can step up as allies and partners in this fight, all with an eye towards the things that we've talked about so far here today, which is how do we fight back and win? And for Men for Choice, we think about that in the short term. How do we bring more volunteers to support organizations like NOW and Planned Parenthood and Personal PAC and the ACLU and you all, right? How do we bring more volunteers to support your work? And in the long term, how do we change the culture on this issue? And in particular, how do we make it so that the next generation of men do not treat this as if this is someone else's issue, but rather that this is our issue too, because this is an issue that impacts all of us, even though far too few men actually understand what is at stake for them in the fight to ban abortion across this country. And so that's what we're trying to do. That's how we approach this work, is really with an eye towards getting more men like me to talk to more of our friends so that they come into this work as partners with you to organize for change. And we know this is going to be a long, long fight ahead. And we are committed to all of that work in the short term and the long term. And I'm really proud of the work we've already done, in particular here in Illinois. Some of you may have phone banked for House Bill 40, which again feels like a long time ago. Some of you may have phone banked for House Bill 40. And if you phone bank for House Bill 40, you may not know this, but the money that paid for those phone banks was raised by Men for Choice, by men specifically, in support of a broad coalition here in Illinois. If you saw the canvases in the summer of 2017, after we passed House Bill 40, and when Bruce Rauner threatened to veto that bill, those canvases were organized in part by members of Men for Choice. If you saw the handmaids protest at the Capitol in 2019, I shouldn't say every, but almost every handmaid's costume was paid for by Men for Choice. The videos that we sent out that were seen by hundreds of thousands of people across the state of Illinois was created by and paid for Men for Choice to help elevate the message. My Amazon account, by the way, was really screwed up for a few weeks after I bought hundreds of red capes and white hats for that campaign. Amazon was feeding me really interesting things. But I bring all this up as a way of saying that we've been doing this work locally, and it's already had an impact, not as the leaders of this movement, not as the voices that should be centered, but as allies and as partners in finding meaningful ways to get men to contribute to this work, which is what we have to do. I want to close with one note about men as partners in this fight, and one note about what we have to do here, which is going to tie directly back to our keynote, Heather Booth, and to Jane. One of the things that we're talking a lot with men about right now that I think is really important is the recognition that, yes, men should step up as allies because your basic rights are under attack. And yes, men benefit when our partner is able to access an abortion at a point in time at which may not be the best for us to be fathers and for you to be mothers. But there's more to this, and that's that men are actually stakeholders with something to lose. And while my body isn't under attack, if the government can control my partner's body, the government can control how we build a family together. And while no man should have the decision of whether and when to have children, the reality is that in the context of a healthy relationship, the decision of whether and if to have children is a decision that we make together, husbands and wives, right? Parent and co-parent. That is a decision that we make together. It is one of the most consequential decisions that we can make. And so one of the things that we are starting to say to the men around us is, yes, show up as an ally because you have an obligation to, but just in case that is not enough, while your body may not be under attack, your freedom is, your family is. And we have to show up with urgency now and into the future, because if the government has the right to control how we build families, then all of us are less free. This is not just a fight about abortion. It is a fight about freedom and power and control. No person can be free if they don't have the power to control their own body, their own health care, and their own reproductive decisions. Either you have the power to control your body, or the government has the power to control you. Either my partner has the power to control her reproductive decisions, or the government has the power to control how we build our family together. And with that, to bring us back to Jane, in honor of the amazing women, in particular Heather Booth, who founded Jane so many years ago, in partnership with Personal PAC and the Future Voices Council, we have launched Jane's Army 2022 here in Illinois. Yes, it is critical that we elect at least 2 more senators who are willing to make sure that we can codify abortion rights across the country. Yes, it is critical that we make sure that we have pro-choice governors across the country and pro-choice prosecutors to protect people in their local jurisdictions. But the reality is that our rights are still at threat here in Illinois. Betty brought up something that that Citizens Action is working on, and I'm a proud member of the Policy Council at Citizens Action, and that is making sure that voters understand the risks we have here in Illinois around these 2 Supreme Court seats in particular. If we lose these 2 swing seats on the Illinois State Supreme Court in 2022, seat 1 is out in sort of DuPage and Will County, and the other seat is out by Lake County. If we lose those 2 swing seats, we will wake up on November 9th with an anti-abortion majority in the Illinois Supreme Court. And none of us, especially today in the aftermath of the fact that Roe has been overturned at the federal level, should feel safe for a moment with the idea that our rights in Illinois are going to come down to 4 anti-abortion judges with the power to overturn everything that we've done in the last few years to protect abortion rights and access in Illinois. And the way that we protect our backyard first, and by the way, not just the roughly 8 million people in Illinois, but the tens of millions of people around this country who are dependent on the state of Illinois for access to a full essential reproductive health care, including abortion, is by protecting these 2 seats and ensuring that we elect pro-choice governors, or excuse me, pro-choice Supreme Court justices in Illinois in November. It's the most important thing that we can do, is taking care of our backyard first. And so in a moment, I'm going to put in a link into this chat to janesarmy2022.com. If you're interested in phone banking, text banking, knocking on doors, or just sharing this link with others, help us recruit volunteers, because we are going to be canvassing in these districts, talking to voters directly, making sure that they know who to vote for and who is the pro-choice judge on the ballot, because it's incredibly important that as step 1, if nothing else, that we know that reproductive rights and access will be safe in Illinois when we wake up on November 9th of 2022, regardless of what happens at the national level. And so with that, my deep gratitude to all of you. There are some icons and heroes on this call, and I'm honored to have a little bit of space to be in community with you. And I just want you to know that we are out here fighting with you and trying to build an army and to literally change the way men think, speak, and act on this issue. I know far too many of us have been far too silent for far too long. And that has to change, and we are deeply, deeply committed to that work. And that's why I'm so proud of the programs that we've developed to do that. And the 33 18 to 25-year-old men who are working with us this summer, organizing their peers into action with us. By the way, that group of 33 guys is in 12 different states. So this is not just happening in Illinois. We're trying to build this everywhere, because this fight is everywhere. And we're doing the best that we can. So with that, I'll hand the floor back to Donna. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Oren. Oh, well, so important to hear from men. It's just so important. So Heather, so we are like so filled with inspiration and motivation right now. And Heather, are there any questions in the chat that you saw that you want to address? Is there anything? I mean, you have covered so much of what people were asking in there. I'm not really sure that there's more to it. Any thoughts on that?
I have a question on timing.
Okay, yeah.
Probably told me and I forgot. Is the meeting generally an hour or an hour and a half? So I don't know.
So we kind of just filter into like 7:15-ish, and
Okay.
you know, and we're
We have
generally cut
maybe-
off it. So we just have you know, just a little bit more time left. And you know, if there's closing thoughts from you, or if there's any questions you want to
Well,
answer.
see, partly I agree with the comments that I saw in the chat. Absolutely, we have to build coalition, just as I gave the example on the Koch brothers, but we have to do that for ourselves. And I had directed the Coalition on Marriage Equality. Yes, they're coming. So our fates are linked. And the Thomas opinion indicated that contraception is part of it. Even what medicine is available. There's got a legal issue about, will medical abortion be available? The medicines be available online to people in a state that have banned abortion or virtually banned it. the number of bad things is amazing. When Oren was talking about a Jewish tradition that led him in part to what he's doing, I thought of two things that I wanted to comment on. Of Mastriano, the guy who is running for the Republican candidate for governor in Pennsylvania, has as a hired consultant the person who is the head of a right-wing site called Gab, that is not only, it is racist, but it is particularly anti-Semitic around, this is a white Christian nation. And there was a right-wing MAGA supporting Jewish conservative, not a right-wing talk show host who wanted to work with Gab and Mastriano, the Republican governor candidate. And the head of Gab said, I won't work with that Jew because this is a white wing Christian nation. This is the level that we're going. I grew up thinking we wouldn't repeat what happened in Germany because we had been part of it. But we should remember, we've learned from it. But we should remember Hitler came to power through an election and then ripped apart the democratic infrastructure, even as weak as it was. For us, we need to continue the work. When I was in Mississippi, there was a phrase that people often asked each other, and they'd say, are you willing to die for freedom? And I very much wanted to live, but I was willing to take the risk if that's what was needed. But now I think the challenge is different. I really think it is, do you want to live for freedom? Do you want to do the work every day when it's too hot or too cold or too boring? Or I've done it already. I've already made 10 phone calls. Jane Ramsey knows what I'm talking about here. And you still do it again. And you take the lesson to heart, as Chicago Women Take Action does, with Jackie Grimshaw's leadership, with Sherry's leadership, with Donna, and with the rest of you. And that
Heather,
when we organize with love at the center, we have changed this world, and you will change this world. And I thank you.
Heather, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how moving this whole hour has been, and Oren, you too. I mean, it's just amazing how much passion and purpose is embedded in your thoughts and in the 4 M's and in the organizing young men. And I think that, you know, we recorded this and it will be available if you ever forget anything, and we're trying to capture some of the chat if necessary. And just to say that we are grateful for Heather Booth and you too, Oren, and the work you're doing, and we will be your wingmen. So thank you, everybody. It was a
Donna,
yeah. Go
Donna,
ahead.
could I just ask that
Please.
that independent and that I can't remember, Oren, how you described Terry Crosgrove, but Terry, if you're still here, I can't see everybody.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
I would like
So
you to say,
good.
Oh, if Terry's on the call, a shout out.
Terry
Thank
was
you,
here.
Jackie.
He's
shout out to
working
Terry.
with the
Yeah,
Illinois.
he's still here. So
Yeah.
Terry, say something
Sorry,
about
my
Terry,
the
camera
fact.
isn't
Terry,
working.
we love you. I followed your leadership for so long, and thank you for the legacy you lead that we're carrying on.
Thank you very much, Heather. And I wouldn't have missed this for anything tonight, regardless of my computer camera not working.
Gary, I want to say something to you. And when I was on the board of Personal PAC, you warned us. You warned us every week that something could happen. And we actually, in many ways, didn't believe it.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on something Oren said. I mean, when we introduced House Bill 40 in 2017, we got so much pushback that to turn a phrase that I was a drama queen, and everyone and all of us that were working for this, we were going over the edge, and you know, we were being hyperbolic and everything. And I'm so sad that it turned out to be true. But I'm so glad we did it, because we were one of only 4 states in in 2017, they have a trigger law, and now 21 states have it. And one thing I'm just going to take 30 seconds on the Supreme Court. The day after that governor, whose name will remain nameless, signed House Bill 40, Peter Breen and the right wingers signed a lawsuit that is sitting in the courts right now to undo House Bill 40. If we lose these 2 Supreme Court seats, we will have a Supreme Court just like Donald Trump's that will overturn House Bill 40, which means our trigger law goes back into effect, making abortion in all circumstances, no exceptions for a woman's life, rape or incest or anything, illegal in Illinois, as well as IVF, as well as the most commonly used forms of birth control. In my 33 years at Personal PAC, I have never been more frightened in my life about the outcome of election in these 2 Supreme Court seats. So I know many of you here are already involved with it, but we have such a responsibility to the 56 million women in the Midwest who are counting on us to be here as each one of these states fall and make abortion inaccessible, illegal, and dangerous. So I'm literally begging all of you, and I know Heather and Oren have done such a great job, to do everything you can to help us win these Supreme Court seats. Nothing can be, these are 10-year terms, which means if this is not, there's not gonna be an election in 2 years. I mean, we're gonna lose the court for the next 10 years. It's not just abortion rights, it's labor, it's environmental, it's gun safety, it's LGBTQ, it's racial justice. Literally every issue that we care about is on the ballot November 8th, 99 days from today. So to follow up on what Heather said, organize. Jan Schakowsky said, I was on a Zoom with her, and she said, turn off MSNBC and CNN and pick up a clipboard and go talk to your neighbors. and then Jane Fonda said where we gave Heather Booth our Pro-Choice Leadership Award, Jane Fonda said, organizing is the best form of therapy. If you're feeling depressed, you're feeling down, you're full of anxiety, you make 10 phone calls, you write 25 postcards, you knock on 5 doors, that's therapy. You will feel so much better because you'll be in the mix of making change. And so Heather, thank you so much, and Oren too. And I'm more than honored to be sitting here listening to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Our
Terry.
anger to action. our
Jackie, can
protest
I
to
just
power.
say, Terry was at the press conference with us, and you're more than welcome, Terry, to join us on September 12th.
Okay, September 12th is what again?
It's a Monday, and we're
Yes.
going to be talking about protect our courts.
Okay, I will be there. Yeah, I will. And
Yeah.
it was great to be with you then, Betty. And we're going to do this. We are going
Right.
to do this. Yes.
And
And
just
so for
on
anybody that's interested, it'll be on our webpage. You can register for the 12th and the conversation that's coming up. But Nana, do you want to say one last thing before we let everybody go and have the rest of their Monday night?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of gratitude. Oren had to go take his child for a bath. He's a new father somewhat, so God bless him. And I think he understands family more than anything, having a child. And Terry, for all you've done for the state of Illinois, it's a template that people talk about in other states. So we're gonna work hard, all of us. We're gonna make the commitment. We're gonna follow the 4 M's. We're going to make sure that you stay involved and that we get the job done. We're going to get this job done because you know what? There's more of us than them. There is more of us than them. And when you get depressed, whether you make phone calls, keep this in the back of your mind. There is more of them, more of us than them. They are definitely more of us. So I thank you all for being here tonight, and let's all stay connected. I hope you've captured some of the links in the chat of people that are organizations like Midwest Academy, like Personal PAC, like Men for Choice. I mean, there's a lot there, and get in touch with us at Chicago Women Take Action. We're here for everybody. So with that, I say good night.
Good night.
Here.
And, yeah, check our website if you want the recording. Sherry will have it up later this month. And Sherry, you're saving the chat too, right? Yes,
Yeah,
Okay,
and thank
all
you,
right.
Sherry. It was a big
Awesome
job.
job,
Thank you.
Donna.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you all. And it took a village and a team to get this together. So yeah. So thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you all. Heather, I love you. Terry, I love you too.
Thank
Let's
you.
Love
make
you,
this.
Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
Yes.
Thank you, Jackie,
You.
Donna.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.